With me here today is Mr. John Pry. John's out of Bedford, Texas, joined 2014, has 6 houses, 29 apartments, 3,750 units, of which he's made anywhere from 80 to 350% profit on these deals. Quite a bit of profit, I would say, as you look at this. He retired 2.5 years after joining Lifestyles, after 30 years of being an engineer. And he has doubled his net worth since joining. Right now, he's one of Lifestyle's greatest passive advocates, and we're happy to have you on the show here, John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
John, let's start with the types of things I like to get out of the way with everybody, and that was, what was your life like when you decided that something needed to change? I mean, you had a successful career, and you had a decent life. What was it that spurred you to want to look into something different?
I looked at real estate as a diversification. We had a good life, certainly, and cash and a lot of stock market investments. And I looked at it initially as a third leg of a three-legged stool. As my membership progressed and I saw how well it worked, I ended up taking essentially all of our stock market money out, including actually some IRA investments in a 401k, and put them into multifamily when I saw how well it worked.
So originally you were intending just to spread it out a little bit, to have a little diversification. Something must have happened, that made you willing to change your entire perspective, put it all into multifamily housing. What was it? What was the light that went off?
The light that went off for me was the threat of yet another layoff. Long-term petroleum engineer, 2014, oil prices collapsed again, eventually went from $107 down to $26 a barrel. And I had been laid off due to low oil prices 3 times in my young lifetime. I didn't want to go through that again. There's all the worry and concern. So I looked at it as a more stable diversification. Now I sleep very well at night with the vast majority of my net worth in real estate.
Yeah, sleeping is fine.
I was a huge Dave Ramsey guy. Nobody on God's earth more conservative than me. And I found I was attracted to the stability and the consistent higher returns that real estate investing offers.
Well, let's talk about the Dave Ramsey concept and the transformation, the willingness, because I would think most engineers are pretty conservative. And I take the word conservative and I can morph that really quickly into skeptical. And I resemble that. Skepticism is my favorite way of life. So as a Dave Ramsey, which he just lives an entire life in fear, I'm going to go broke, I'm going to lose everything, the world's going to end, beans and rice, beans and rice, beans and rice, broken down car. How do you go, and you go from that to listening to, and I assume you listen to the radio show, I don't know, is that how you heard about us?
Actually, my little brother was a pretty new member of Lifestyles down in the Houston office. And he was very successfully buying some single-family properties and duplexes. And I invested passively with him. And I compared that to stock market investing. And I had always done as well as anyone in the stock market. But his returns were consistently higher and more stable than the stock market. And there was a side of me that said, anything my little brother could do, I can probably do better.
All right.
On his recommendation, I checked out Lifestyles and joined.
Well, you said you did 5 houses before you came in. Did you do them before you checked out Lifestyles, before or after your brother started doing his stuff?
That was actually after he started doing his. 2011, I recognized that single-family houses were undervalued coming out of the foreclosure crisis. But Dave Ramsey guy, I bought them all for cash still. I was targeting about a 7% rate of return, and it was easy to get that. But I bought them all for cash. So that's that conservative Dave Ramsey mentality. And part of my motivation was to learn how to do single family better. And certainly I did. The 2-day was an eye-opening experience for me. But in the 2-day, I recognized the power of multifamily passive investing. I was a practicing engineer. I didn't have a lot of time, but I had a lot more cash. And so the passive investing in multifamily became clearly the way for me to go.
What was a light bulb, John? The 2 day is a lot of information. And somebody like yourself, an engineer, you could get really deep into the information. What was the light bulb that set it all off for you?
There is a part of the 2 day where David Fishers, who I took it from first time, he asked everybody, think about your passive income and divide that by your net worth. Think what your rate of return on your net worth is. Mine was very, very low. And I woke up and said, mine is almost equivalent to CDs, but yet I'm taking a lot more risk than that in the stock market. That's just absolutely crazy. So understanding the power of leverage based on that return on net worth being such a low number, that was the single biggest epiphany I had.
Well, so you really you were referred in, which is an interesting approach because listening to the radio show, building up interest, then showing up, being skeptical. You really don't have as much skepticism when you already have somebody in here that you know. Were you surprised when you got here, John, how open people were with their information, personal and business?
That was absolutely one of the most amazing parts to it. And it's actually, I think, a superpower of lifestyles. The abundance mentality, which you established very early on, allows all of us to help each other, coach each other, and encourage each other. I needed that. I was a very skeptical engineer when I joined, and I thought, well, I'll see what this is all about. But then here, all of a sudden, I was surrounded by a group of successful, like-minded investors that were very open to share information and very interested in helping me get integrated into the group. So as a result of that, I've carried that on. I've been a member 4.5 years now, retired for a couple of years. But that is a big satisfaction for me, helping new members get integrated into the group. I cannot go back and unlearn what I know now. I can't go back and relive all those aha moments as early in my membership. So I kind of live vicariously through new members, helping and seeing them become successful as well.
You've got my life pegged, John. 29 years of living vicariously off people going, oh, wow. Is it real? That it really is fun, which we'll get into later when we talk about, how much of an ambassador you are for Lifestyles. I would like to go further now into the investment part of it because really, you came out and did passive investment. No, you did one single family first, right?
Yes, sir. I did one more because I wanted to prove this all worked. Very conservative Dave Ramsey guy. I'm going to buy a train wreck house. I'm going to use a hard money loan. And we'll see if it's really as good as what they teach. And it was. My initial rate of return on that house was 22% cash on cash. I targeted 7% when I bought those previous houses. And the only work I did, I just walked around taking pictures 3 times a week. And when I showed them to one of my mentors, Rick Johnson, I titled every one of them, Everybody Working But Me. Isn't this great?
Yeah, that is the secret, isn't it? There's the saying that there's 2 types of people, those willing to work and those willing to let them. And one of the things you have to learn very quickly is to let everybody else do all the work. You do the planning and make all the money. So
I learned that very quickly.
What made you decide after you did the house to go into multifamily? It was interesting because you did one to prove it. I guess I understand. Okay, I paid my money. Now I need that proof, so to speak. What made you change over to multifamily that quickly, though?
Well, I knew long term that my path was going to be passive investing because I enjoyed what I did for a living. I enjoyed being an engineer, and I had more money than I had time because I did work 50 hours a week, spent a lot of time in the Gulf of Mexico and other places. So I knew passive investing was a route for me. But again, conservatism. I was focusing early on my education and network. Those are the 2 fundamental keys to success in lifestyles. And I have to get to know people that I'm going to invest with, understand how they think, and I have to like them on a personal basis. So I only invested my first year in lifestyles in one multifamily investment. I was scared to death when I did it, but it turned out to be an absolutely heroic project. And the more people I met, the more lead investors I met, and understood more how lifestyles worked, I became more and more confident. And so I invested in more and more properties every year as time went on.
So The first property, you met someone, you became a kindred spirit with them, felt comfortable for that investment. But you did 29 apartment complexes in 4.5 years. That's not 29 kindred spirits, I don't believe. Tell us how you prioritized which deals you were going to get into. Did it have more to do with the jockey being the lead investor or the horse being the deal that you were looking at? Which one did you weight more when you decided if you're going to get into a deal?
All the money is on the jockey. So if I don't like and respect the lead investor, I don't care what the deal looks like. Economically, I'm not going to invest with him. What irritates me now, though, is that I'm very disciplined about maintaining a good bit of liquidity because that helps me sleep well at night. And so I'm very disciplined. I've invested in 29 deals, as you said, but I've watched many more than that go by that I liked. I liked the lead investor. I really thought the deal was going to do well, but I'm very disciplined about maintaining liquidity. I'd be invested in twice that many if I was not particularly disciplined about it.
Well, I think that's actually a really good point for someone to think about, especially once you've decided to retire, you've given up your regular reoccurring income. When you're still working, you can just blast away because you know that you're going to be fed and your house is going to be paid for tomorrow. But when you have to live off the cash flow, you've got to have some reserves. So do you have a way that you can explain to us how you structure your reserves? You don't have to give us exact numbers of what you have, but how do you mentally see what you should keep aside for liquidity when you are living off of passive investments? And I'm going to caveat this. You're living off passive investments you don't write the check to yourself from. You know, my passive investments, my apartments and my houses, I write the check. So I know where, when I was a lead, if I decided, I think we're going to do a new project, let's go ahead and save back 50 grand this quarter to put up a new fence. And you're sitting there going, I need braces for my kids. I'm going, we need a new fence. There's a little bit of a difference there, right? Whereas I have control and you don't have that control. So how do you equate liquidity safety being in the situation where you have no control over the deals at all?
Well, to make me sleep well at night, I keep about 10% of our net worth as liquid to somewhat liquid assets. And the rest of it is in both single family and multifamily investments. You're exactly right. I look at it this way. I must live off of regular distributions and the income from the houses. A cash out refinance, which I've had several of, or sales proceeds, that all has to be reinvested. Just like a farmer never eats his seed corn, I always reinvest those proceeds. That way my income and net worth continue to grow.
And it's interesting because it's typical. Yours is a typical story, not to say yours is any less interesting than anybody else, but in that someone comes in, they start trying to replace their income. That becomes the goal. Now you replaced your income. Now you're sitting there retired. You would think game over, now you just live the rest of your life, but that's not what's happening. You're continuing to increase your net worth and continuing to increase the size of your portfolio, the effectiveness of your portfolio, hopefully. So tell us how you, I guess I'm trying to get to the Curtis Haynes equation, which I thought was interesting the way he explained to me when I interviewed him. He said, Del, if I had $1 in the bank when I came here, I now have 64 apartment complexes and $1 billion worth of real estate, and I have $4 in the bank. And so in other words, all these assets are out there, yet I still have this much more in the bank than I started with. How does that represent to you? I know you had a lot in the bank, and that's why you could go ahead and go. So do you have half of your original investments or original net worth, a quarter, a third, 16th? What is that? And secondly, another way to look at it, I'm just kind of give you some ideas of how to explain it to people, because everybody thinks about it differently. What about an annual cost of living? Because you say a tenth of something. Well, a tenth of $1 billion is a lot different than a tenth of $50,000, right? I got 50 grand worth of investments. A tenth of that's $5 grand. You're not living on that very long. So as a portion of your cost of living, John, how would you look at it that way?
Our cost of living essentially consists of our quarterly distributions from multifamily passive deals, as well as our income from our 5 remaining single-family houses. So that income has continued to grow. We have increased our living expenses in that we pay our own medical insurance now. And we've been doing a lot more traveling this last year than we had before. Uh,
Yeah, I saw your travel log. It's quite extensive. We'll get into that at the end here. So on the liquidity part, would you say you keep 6 months reserve, 3 months reserve? What do you keep in liquidity wise in case
Conservative engineer, it's at least a year.
that a year? Okay, that's what I was trying to get to is what are we looking at? How much is safe and how safe is safe and whatever. I was looking at mine one time and I said, you talk about being safe and conservative. After I sold all my apartment complexes, and this is the way I looked at it, okay? This is a weird thing, but I just want to share this with you because it's kind of interesting. I was always considering that I could live on $250,000 a year, which is a lot for most people, but I've elevated my cost of living quite a bit, right? So 250 grand a year. And yet I thought for $1 million, I could live for 4 years, for 2 million, I live for 8 years. And then I started counting down how old I am. And I said, man, I've got more than enough to live 20 years. I'm not going to live. I'm, 62 and no one's lived past 65 in my family. So if I lived to 68 or 70, I'm doing great, right? I got way more than enough. And then after I sold these apartments, it's like, wow, I can live on $1 million a year for the next 30 years. And I go, ooh, this is bizarre. But then, and this is the point I'm getting back to, but then, and here is the other side of that stick. You pick up one end of the stick, you got the other side too, but then you look at all that capital sitting there not earning anything. And then you go, oh my gosh. And that's what you say, when that money comes out, when you sell those apartments or you do that 1031, or whether you go out there and refinance that, when that chunk of money comes, that's got to get back in, right? Right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. And that way that's why our net worth has doubled since I joined 4.5 years ago. That's why our income continues to grow. That's why we support a kid in college still and pay a lot of money every month in insurance. But it's a much more comfortable feeling because I know those checks or those direct deposits are coming every single quarter. And I have the world's greatest single family residence. So I have no problems with that either. It's a much more secure income than a W-2 income. Remember, I was laid off twice during my working career and was faced with that same thing again in 2014. So there's a much higher sense of security on my part, knowing that I am very well diversified among a top tier group of people that are the lead investors on the project I'm in. Much more secure than having a W-2 job.
Yeah. So let's look at your involvement in lifestyles now. Obviously, the investment part of it's been good for you. What have you got out of it socially, emotionally? I know you give quite a bit back. You spend a lot of time with people. So you have a passion for helping other people. You're not getting paid to do it. You're an ambassador for the whole program. What are you getting from all that, John?
I'm getting a sense of satisfaction by watching new members follow the same path I did. I have a lot of friends that have come behind me, and it's just a wonder to me to watch them have the same realizations and step changes in income and net worth that I had after I joined. I am an ambassador, as you mentioned, from the start of the ambassador program, but I'm not doing anything I wasn't already doing before the ambassador program. I really get a lot of personal satisfaction out of getting people into the group, getting them integrated into the group, and taking full advantage of what Lifestyles has to offer. That makes me happy, Dale. I understand what you're talking about when you say that's your sense of satisfaction from the last 29 years. I get that.
Well, John, I think that a lot of people do because the ambassador party, what a wonderful event. 300 ambassadors, none of which are getting paid to get out there and help other people, to mentor other people, to motivate other people, stimulate other people. By the way, did you like the event?
It was fantastic.
Like
Thank you so much.
the location and everything?
It was great.
I was going to get married in that place. That was where we were planning on getting married. And then in a pinch, we had to come up with a place for this event. And I said, hey, this is it. We got to go there. So we did. Let's go one step further. Legacy. What's the legacy look like in your family from that stuff?
Legacy will be what our kids inherit when I am gone from this earth. Two of our kids are actually preferred investor group members now. Even our daughter, who is in her last year of college, I just recently got her to come to a 2-day with David Fisher because I wanted her to hear it from somebody besides dad. You know, kids don't listen to their parents. She came away from that 2-day absolutely charged up and enthusiastic. So she's very happy to be a PIG member now. She's got savings that she doesn't know about, and that's going to go into multifamily as well. I didn't have the benefit of starting when I was a kid coming out of college like our two kids had. I had that one regret that most members have. We did not find lifestyles 20 years ago. I found lifestyles 4.5 years ago. So I will have no worries when I pass about my kids continuing to manage that portfolio as they inherited. And they will build up their own portfolio too, Dale. That's the exciting part.
You know, I have to share this with you, John, because I think you'll get a chuckle out of it. Maybe the audience will too. But for years, my daughter has shown no interest in real estate investing at all because she had no need to. I mean, being the daughter of a wealthy person, I told her pretty much you do whatever you want to do in life. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to give you a stipend to live on. If you want to work, you work, whatever. She worked when she was a kid. By the time she was 16 years old, she had like 10, 12, 15,000 bucks in the bank. So she'd already built up the work ethic, the whole idea. But then she got like, okay, why do I need to do this? What am I going to be? Who am I going to be in life? In other words, if money is easy, who are you? Does that make sense? So she went out to find herself. So she found herself as being a professional bodybuilder. And so she prides herself now on that, and that's what she wants to do. But the other day, she was speaking on the phone to Melissa, my fiance, and I overheard this statement. It was very, very shocking. She said, you know, I'm still young enough I can beat dad. And what I thought she was talking about was the fact that if we're in my office right now, you see I have trophies, I've won all sorts of contests. She's won contests. I thought she was going to say, or she was saying, I'll be a pro bodybuilder before my dad was a pro bodybuilder. But that wasn't the question. I said, what are you saying? And so she was on speakerphone. She realized I was listening. I said, what did you just say? And she goes, well, Dad, you know, you didn't retire until you're 34 years of age. I'm still only 29. I'm definitely going to beat you.
That's great.
And you know, John, like you say, they don't listen to you. She's not listening to me. She didn't care about my seminars. She didn't care about my bodybuilding. She never even paid attention to bodybuilding until one day she wanted to do it out of nowhere, and then she did it. So I let everybody out there realize this point. We think our kids aren't paying attention to us. I think they're paying more attention to us than we even know. In other words, we're talking some stuff. They're watching what we walk. And John, you're walking the path. You've done it. Now your children are following it. You're leaving a legacy. You're leaving that legacy at Lifestyles Unlimited. We really appreciate that. And I appreciate coming on live here on YouTube. Meet Dell. You know, this is a great opportunity for everyone out there to get to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you for this wonderful organization that you've built, Dale. It's changed our lives.